Welcome, gentle reader. I hope you are ready to embark with me upon an adventure into the romance of Regency England. Hello, my lovely friends, it's Margaret. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are going to be going on a little jaunt through the first 4 books in the Bridgerton series. I, much like many of you, got caught up in the magic and majesty that was the TV show Bridgerton over on Netflix back when the first season aired. If you have clicked on this video, I am assuming that you have found yourself asking the same question that I was asking after I finished season 1. And that question was, are the books any good? So today I am reading the first 4 Bridgerton books, so you don't have to. This should be an interesting project because I've got an even split of books that I know something about and books that I don't really know much about what the actual plot is. Those first 4 books are The Duke and I, The Viscount Who Loved Me, An Offer from a Gentleman, and Romancing Mr. Bridgerton by Julia Quinn. So here's the thing. All of this has been filmed prior to me getting to watch season 3, like every single bit of it. So I am going into this knowing a bit about the first 2 books, kind of knowing the plot of what that's going to be. So those I'm going to be doing a lot of comparison to the shows. The last 2, we don't even know. Like, we don't know when Benedict and Sophie's book is going to be adapted. We do know that, like, this season is Colin and Penelope's. For the last 2 books, I will only be able to make predictions as to what I think they may or may not adapt. Quick caveat, because I feel like the context of what I did in school is important to understand how I am going to be looking at the source material and applying that to how things are adapted. I have a degree in theater with technically, I did all of the work for a minor in costume design. I spent a lot of my college years analyzing plays, figuring out how to adapt them to the stage, what you would need to do for set, for costume, for things like that. My school even did a version of Pride and Prejudice that was adapted for the stage. So I have some experience and some knowledge with adaptation. When I go into looking at an adaptation, the thing that I am primarily looking for is, did they keep the spirit of the thing the book was trying to do? I am not looking for a one-to-one translation because you're working with different media, and there are things you can do on the printed page that are much more difficult to create in a real sense on the screen, and there are things that you can do on the screen that are more difficult to do with a book depending on the way the book is being written. It's kind of the context of where I'm coming from and part of why I don't have an issue watching things before I've read the book. Sometimes there are things that I definitely want to have read the book before I watched the movie or the TV show or whatever, but for the most part I do find like interest and joy in finding the differences between the 2 things. I'm not a stickler for read the book first, which is why it's taken me like, what, 3 years to get to these books. Now that you have that context, let's go ahead and get into me reading the books. Hello and welcome to Bridgerton check-in uno. I've just gotten in. If you haven't seen the last video I did in my brother's apartment, hi, I'm in Baltimore right now. I'm in Baltimore for all of one night, and then apparently I'm getting kidnapped and driven to South Bend, but by way of DC, we're gonna stop by DC on the way. We are here for the first check-in. I am 80 pages into this book. So here's the thing, I kind of have an idea of what is going to be happening later on in this book. Like, I know plot points that happen. Obviously, I know like a lot of the plot points that happen in this book because I've seen the first 2 seasons on Netflix. Like, the setup has been very interesting. It's a little bit more involved than what we got on the Netflix show. I kind of like I think I kind of like the build on the Netflix show a little bit better, but this does touch on a few things that kind of, like, a few things that for me watching the show, I was like, I don't understand why. Like, here's the thing. In the show, it's her debut. It is her first time out in the season. When we start the book, this is her 2nd, or potentially we're going into her 3rd season of being unmarried. The desperation with which they wanted to get Daphne married in that first season, and the fact that, like, it was going to be the end of all things if she was not married, like, that kind of, like, it felt weird to me knowing the things I know about how that works. I was like, it's your first season, sweetie. And, like, I kind of chalked that up to her being, like, what, 17, 18? 16, something like that. It chalked that up to her being young and her being her debut and her having all of this and the pressure of being the diamond, which I don't know if it's going to be a thing in the book, if the whole being the diamond thing was going to be a thing in the book. But I was just like, okay, this is entirely like her freaking out because of internal pressure, because like you're not getting married in your first season, not a big deal. Like, you want to get married as quickly as possible, but if you don't get married in your first season, no one's going to be looking weird at you. You know what I mean? In the book, it's like I said, her second or her third. We're going into her, like, I think it's her third season, which makes sense that she would suddenly be feeling pressure to make a match this season, because going 3 seasons without having made a match, that is in fact, like, yeah, that could look badly upon her in the eyes of the Taunt. I wish that they had kept that. We're also getting a lot more of like Simon's backstory really early on, which I appreciate, and I think you need to like understand what's going on. Like, I think the way, like, it's very interesting to kind of see the way they mixed around some of the events and how we get some of the information, because I think it makes for a really compelling TV show, and I think it makes sense in the context of a TV show. But I also think that, like, we need that information when we're doing a book. We need that information a lot earlier on, because we don't have as much of the visual cues and things like that. I'm seeing the differences, but I actually really appreciate the changes that they made to the way the story is being told in the show, because I think it really fits TV. Like, this is one of those where I think that I am going to get to the end of this and I'm gonna be like, okay, it really makes sense. Like, the differences make sense from book to TV, because you have to make some of those changes. I'm really, like, the shenanigans with the brothers and, like, their first meeting and her punching Nigel, like, that scene, there's a little bit more to it in the book, and it's so much funnier. Like, I can definitely see why they end up being drawn to each other, and then, like, him meeting her, not realizing that she's Anthony's sister. Hilarious. That is the kind of stuff that I love in my books. Just love it. I think for the most part, with the exception of that scene, I'm going to like this, because, like, we've already started building up Simon's trauma when it comes to children, and I think I'd be going into this a little bit differently if I hadn't just read The Princess Trap by Talia Hibbert. But The Princess Trap by Talia Hibbert also covers a character and the fact that them being abused really contributed to their desire not to have children. I won't say necessarily a desire, because there is a conversation that's had later in that book where they're talking about, like, like, the idea of having kids terrifies me so much that I haven't even been able to think about whether or not I want them, is basically kind of what happened. I know the reason he doesn't want kids. I know, like, what he says the reason that he doesn't want kids is. I think that is just a front. Like, that's his excuse to not look into why the idea of having kids scares him, and makes him upset. And I can it's a perfectly valid response to be treated badly as a child and go, I want to make sure that I never do that, treat anyone like that. I do not want to have that kind of power over someone because of the way that someone having that power over me affected me. That's a valid response. There's so much going on, and I'm trying not to get too far ahead of myself, because I know where this is going. I was looking in the back, because they've got a little Bridgerton family tree in the back, and it's funny to me that we started with the Duke and I, which is book 1, which is Daphne, and she is the 4th child. And then for the rest of them, we go in order. Like, why couldn't we have just gone from birth order? I mean, Anthony's a dick in this book, or at the beginning at least, at least based on the TV show, so I can understand why we would need a more sympathetic character for us to get to a point where we want to root for him in his book. I'm gonna go read some more of this book, and I'm gonna drink my tea, and I'm gonna hope this headache goes away, because I'm not sure whether it's because I hadn't drank water, because I don't drink water before getting on a plane, or if it's because, well, I don't drink water within 2 hours of getting on a plane, or if it's because I hadn't had my caffeine yet. It's amazing what a big old picture window does for your lighting situation, guys. We are getting ready to go to DC to go see, going to go see the cherry blossoms. That was the thing that I was like, that's what I want to do. We're going to go check out some stuff there. I haven't been there since I was like a teenager. Maybe, not entirely sure. Actually, underneath my eyes look so tired. My allergies went wild yesterday. I am 142 pages into The Duke and I by Julia Quinn. I'm enjoying it. Like, I know there's stuff coming that I'm not going to, like, it's gonna take it down. It's gonna keep it from being a 5-star for me. But I still like it so far. I like the dynamic between Simon and Daphne. as they're kind of coming up. It's very different how they, because like in the show, I believe it was Daphne's idea. Here they make it Simon's. I kind of like it better with it being Daphne's idea, you know? There's like just subtle differences, like the fact that like the reason she hasn't ended up having anyone want to propose really is because everyone sees her as a friend. There is some like early 2000s kind of I'm not like other girls in this, I will warn y'all. Just kind of like a, oh, Daphne's not like the other girls that are obsessed with balls and parties and blah blah blah. And like that was also something that you saw in like literature of the time. I get that, but I'm not sure how I feel about it. You've probably heard me talk about this in regards to Pride and Prejudice and like Mrs. Bennet and the fact that like she's not actually as silly as everyone thinks she is. Like, I get why it annoys her husband and her daughters, but she's not, she's thinking about the future, and she knows what that is without a man involved for her kids, especially since she has 5 girls. It's hard, because a lot of what we know about a time period is from literature of the time, and there was a lot of literature making fun of silly young women, hear that in quotes. So I get why people would assume that this is the prevailing attitude, but you can also look at literature of the time and see that that wasn't, like, this was a very sensible, this was a business transaction these girls are planning on doing, you know? I like the writing style, I like the characters, like the Bridgerton as family, like I 100%, like this is why, like I get people read it for the romance and stuff, but this is why people read these books, is because it's the family dynamic between the siblings. Because it's hilarious. I'm really just having a great time, especially like the dynamic between the 4 eldest. They seem very, very close in ways, and I like it. It's great. I'm having a good time with that. I also like that we're getting some of Violet's thought process and their mom, and the fact that like she truly manipulates her children's opinion of her to get herself some alone time. That is hilarious to me, because there's a scene where she's like, yeah, if I start talking about silly things, the boys leave. My children are like, oh no, mother is talking about all these inane things, we must go. And she's like, they don't understand that I am manipulating them. I'm gonna go, I could work on a video actually. So we're gonna do that. And then I will show you, well, there'll be footage, I'm sure, of us going to DC of some sort. this lighting is just fantastic. We love it. Hey there, I am here at 11 p.m. in the evening. I finished The Duke and I yesterday, and I have thoughts. So here's the thing. I think as a whole, I do prefer the TV show because there are elements that were added into the TV show that I think make for a more interesting and dynamic story, especially for something that's going on that long. Because this is a book, this is a little bit more focused, and we have a little bit more time to go, like, because there's a lot of this that is in our character's head. So you cut that out, you've got some space that you need to fill. There's a lot of stuff that I really preferred how the show handled it a little bit better because I feel like the show gave it a little bit more nuance. I feel like it gave it a little bit more depth than we had in the book to some of it, but I mean, it was still pretty good. I ended up giving it 3 stars. There are a few things that I liked. I don't know that I will say that I liked, but I think that they're better in the book. For example, in this, we deal with Simon's insecurity about his stutter a lot more, and I can't speak on how well that is dealt with, although I do kind of like the tack that is taken in here. And then I also read like the little bonus epilogue, which does spoil things. If you're reading this, and there's an epilogue and then there's a second epilogue. The second epilogue is going to spoil book 4 and or season 3. Since I already knew that happened, I was like, I'm just gonna read this anyways. I'm not gonna tell you what it was about. But poor Daphne. Oh, 41. I wish we had seen more of him struggling with that in the present, because we're in his head, we do see him struggle with having to calm himself down in heated moments and sometimes not being able to do that. And we didn't see any of that in the show. And I wish we had seen more of him struggling with that as an adult in the show, versus it primarily being just a thing that happened in like 2 scenes in the past. And the other thing is there is that scene, and I know there are people who like it better in the show and they think that it was done. I don't. In the book, at least, it is a spur of the moment decision. It is a thing that they are in the moment and she goes, oh, I could do this, and she does. In the show, she goes into that moment with intent. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like in both cases, she is very wrong, and I don't like how either the show or both the show and the movie brush off what she has done. Like, she specifically, explicitly in the book says that she doesn't regret it, which is like, anyways, you can't say you love your partner and then do that and not regret it. They do work through it to some extent, and I think that the working through it part is done better in the movie than in the show, because in the book than in the show, because in the book it's a kind of a moment where it's like, well, you just need to love me as much as I love you, and in this it's like, no, this thing that you did, I didn't like it. Like, I found it objectively shitty. I wasn't happy about that you did that. There's a whole nuanced discussion there. And I think she is, to some extent, called to account a little bit for her actions in the book, whereas in the show, she's not called to account for her actions at all. I'm going to say it was handled so much better in the book itself, in my opinion, just because, it makes her less of a shitty person in the book. There are other reviews where you can go and you can listen to people talking about it. I think that it handled, the book I really liked also, like, I do think that it handled why Simon was the way he was and his motivations for not wanting children. I think if I had not just read The Princess Trap and had another book that had me thinking about, well, yeah, when you're abused as a child, how does that affect how you see and how you want, what your thoughts are on children? And I think that there is, like, reading between the lines, there's what Simon says is the reason he does not want kids, and there is the actual fears that have led him to not wanting children, or being afraid to consider the idea of children. We addressed that at some point. It's something that he has never even allowed himself to consider whether or not he wants. And I liked how they handled that. That was also handled really well in the book. Again, like, I wish that had been the conversation we'd had in the show versus the whole thing that happened at the end of the show. As much as I love the show, like that whole conflict, I wish we'd handled it with a little bit, just so much better. Anyways, so next time you see me, Nick, I will be at home. But I wanted to give you that update while my thoughts were still fresh. We are back in familiar environs, and I have continued on with this little project. I have started The Viscount Who Loved Me by Julia Quinn. These are all by Julia Quinn. I don't know why I'm telling you the author's name. I've gathered from what I've seen online that at some point the show diverges quite a bit from the events of the book. But so far, at almost halfway through, I think it's, well, hold on, 400... a little bit, like a third of the way through, 451 pages. We've followed the plot pretty closely. There are a couple of moments that have not happened. That's normal. You cut out some of the small things, especially if they are things that can be added or reinforced somewhere else in the script of the show. Like, so that makes sense to me. I'm enjoying this. My biggest takeaway right now is that Colin Bridgerton is a menace. He hears someone talking shit about his brother and is like, oh, I gotta make sure that I've gotta get these two in the same place at the same time and see what happens. The way that he did that was adorable. Also, I am 90% certain that these two's mamas saw them dancing and interacting in that first dance and went, are you thinking what I'm thinking? I might be. Like, just, like, went, okay, we're gonna make this happen. In the show, Mary Sheffield seems a little out of it. She seems like she's not quite sure what's going on in a lot of parts of the show. It seems like Kate is the one that takes the lead in everything. And I understand to some extent why we had Kate do that, but like, she's a lot more clever and cunning than she is in the book than she is in the show. And it, like, just the way that she keeps putting Kate and Anthony in situations where they're going to have to interact together is making me think that Mama Sheffield was like, you know, this is like, they don't see it yet, but this is the one this is what's gonna work. This is what's gonna be the thing that happens. I need us to have some more moments between them right now, and I know we're moving to a point where we might get some of that, more moments between them where they get to have some connection that isn't them sniping at each other, because we had our first like big kiss scene, and I was like, this, I don't quite buy it, at least not on her end. Like, Anthony is a whore, so of course he's going to be ready to make out with any woman at any given time. Like, I need some more like moments of actual connection between the two of them where they're like, because I love enemies to lovers or rivals to lovers, that kind of thing, where you've got two people that are butting heads and cannot stand each other. But the thing I love about that trope is when they start learning about each other, and that starts making them go, oh, well, I actually respect and feel for this person. I'll update you guys when I've read another 100 pages or so. This is a very hard book to put down, by the way. Like, that this is even like more harder to put down than the Duke. Like, these are, I'll give Julia Quinn this, these are very readable. Like, you can just go through them and not stop. So like, they grab you and you just keep going. Anthony had no chance. Not even getting into like his relationship with Kate. Every single one of his family members, Daphne just met her, every single one of his family members has met Kate and been like, no, this is the one. Her. Pick her. Man has no chance. He is... I'm having a much better time with this one than I had with the Duke and I think partly because I know that like that scene wasn't... Why is that there? That's going to fall. Let's move that. That scene was in the Duke and I, and I like having that hangover and know that was casting kind of a pall over the entire book. I had fun, but I was like, but also I know she's going to do this. This is going to be a thing that happens, and we don't have that happen, at least as far as I'm aware. The one thing I do really wish we could have, like, I need Anthony to have a realization that all women deserve to be treated the way he wants people to treat a sister. Because, like, at the beginning of the book, there's this big distinction for him between genteel women and then women who are not. And, like, that is, like, the biggest character flaw for me and frustrates me, and I hope that is going to be a learning curve type thing. Like, he's definitely using it as a coping mechanism because the man has this absurd idea that he's going to die young, and I'm just like it's It's so sad. He's like, my dad didn't live past 38. There's no way I'm going to be able to live past 38. But he needs a therapist, has some unresolved trauma. And we're getting to the part where I know they start actually connecting, and I'm very excited about that. This was not where I was going to update you, but like we got to the Pall Mall scene and like Daphne's reaction to Kate, I was like, okay, so at this point, Colin, his mom, and Daphne are all pulling for Kate. They know that Anthony needs someone that is going to be able to handle him, and I love it. All right, cool. Let's get this over with so I can close this window, because it is currently so hot right now. I have finished The Viscount Who Loved Me. That's the name of the book. I was gonna I finished Bridgerton. I have not finished Bridgerton. Anyways, I finished this book, gave it 4 stars. I liked it so much better than I did The Duke and I think for obvious reasons for y'all. This was so interesting to kind of see the changes that they made. I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. Some of my favorite stuff is stuff that was made up for the show, though. This book is based on the marriage of convenience trope, which you just found out that like each book has its own separate trope that she based the book around. So fake dating was the last one. This one is marriage of convenience, and then I know that the next book is going to be fairy tale retelling, which she really like straight on the head of the hammer with that one. I like the tension that builds between Kate and Anthony. I like the little moments that we get. There are things that happen in this book that I'm just like, I wish we'd gotten that in the show. I wish we had gotten to see their families kind of going, are you seeing what I'm seeing? You're seeing it too. The I told you so's from their siblings, all of that kind of stuff. The bee scene, better in the show. I understand why it happened the way that it happened here, but that's still really weird to me. The thing that I will say is I like how, because I think that the books tend to be a bit more insular, if that makes sense. The books tend to be a lot more focused on the couple themselves, which I do like. I like the moments that we get between the couples, but I think that there are some really nice sibling moments that we get in the show that are not in the books. And I like that we get to see those sibling relationships develop. I like that we are, it seems like, covering a lot of, like, the romance is the main focus for the season, but we're getting stuff outside of the romance. I like that in the show. I also, like, especially with this one, I'll be honest, that last act, that third act of the show, I prefer it to how the ending of the book went down. Like, it's just so much more epic and romantic, in my opinion, than what happens in the book. I'm sorry. From when he shows up at her house to the end, I love all of that. And I kept hoping we were going to get that, and we didn't. And I was just like, oh, come on. We do get something similar, but I kind of liked the idea of Kate as a horse girly who goes out riding with no care. The character that is portrayed in the show is a little bit different than our character here. She's a little bit less sure of herself. There's a whole plot line with her, like, because she's constantly compared to Edwina, she is always feeling like she has gotten the idea that she's not pretty, she's not beautiful. Anthony sets her straight, obviously. I kind of liked that detail, but I also liked the way that they did Kate in the show, where she doesn't have any of that insecurity, where it's like a sister looking out for her sister. I can see why changes were made here. I feel like I can see less why changes were made for this one than I could with The Duke and I, but I still liked the show better than the book in this case. Now we move on into uncharted waters, and I've got to pick up an offer from a gentleman, which is Benedict's story. In chronological order, this comes before the book that season 3 is going to be based on, but at the same time, I'm like I gotta read, you gotta read them in order. You gotta read them in order. This is a Cinderella retelling, and like I get that she's doing tropes, and I get the fairy tale retelling. I wish, just from the bit that I've had so far, I wish she'd been a little bit more subtle, especially because, like, there are very real examples of how that kind of situation, which is a stepmother inheriting a daughter or a ward or a bastard, like, there are very, we know what that looks like. I haven't gotten very far in it, so I've only had Sophie's point of view at this point. She is an orphan. She is her father's bastard. She was dumped on the front step of his manor or estate or whatever at the age of 3, and she's lived as his ward for the entire time, but everybody that knows her, they were able to make the connections to be like, no, she's his daughter. He remarries the wife doesn't want to, like, the wife is terrible, evil stepmother, all of that good stuff. I will be honest, as much as I love a Cinderella retelling, I would have chosen a different one for this. I feel like there are so many, especially like more obscure fairy tale retellings that might be a little bit better suited to a Regency plot line. I know at some point Benedict is going to run into her during the masquerade ball at his family's house, yada yada yada. So we'll get there. I'll check in with you guys. I'm having a good time with this though. Oh, also I will say that, like, I liked Antony's reasons, again, in the show for not wanting to fall in love better than I like it in the book. Now, the book, I do understand, like, why that is, but I just felt like the show, at least, was so much more devastating. For him to be like, no, I can't imagine causing that much pain to someone or having that much pain caused to me, so I don't want to love my wife. I want to get along with her, but I don't want to love her because I don't want to open myself up to that much hurt. Anyways. Good morning. I think you guys can probably guess what day that this clip was filmed. Anyways, hi. I have been really bad about updating y'all with this book just because every time that I sit down to read, I remember that I haven't updated anyone. So I am now currently 260 pages into this. It's interesting. I'm not liking this as much as I like the first two books, and it is entirely because of Benedict. The basic premise of this is that they meet at the ball. He immediately has this connection to this mystery woman who's wearing a mask, and then she flees, and he doesn't see her again for 2 years because she is promptly kicked out of her stepmother's house, and she ends up going out into the countryside to find work. We then pick up like 2 years later with Benedict rescuing her at a party as she's trying to leave because the son of the people who own the house she's working at, not a great person. He and his buddies are trying to have some fun and fool around, and it is not fun for her. They run off from this party, and she goes with him to his cottage, and they get rained on. He ends up getting sick because he was just sick, blah, 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 blah. And they end up creating this connection, and Benedict is like, well, I really like you, so like you should just come and live with me in London. Originally, he'd just been like, hey, I can find you a position in your mother's house. She's like, no, this is absolutely not happening. I can't, like, she doesn't like the idea of being somewhere where she can see Benedict every day because she still has a thing for him, and he has no idea who she is. And so my issue is that he has taken a very paternalistic kind of tone to his interactions with her, where he's like, well, I know what's best for you, and I know that, you know, why would you want to be a servant when you could be my mistress? Hasn't even crossed his mind to be like, okay, well, then just we'll get married because she's a servant. Of course he's not going to do that. And she is the daughter of an earl, but she is illegitimate. I'm annoyed with Benedict for most of this because it's like, well, I want this, I want you. We're like, the last two books, we definitely got a lot of enthusiastic, like, desire from both parties. This, it feels like we were entirely focusing on what Benedict wants and like how he feels and so like some of the stuff that's happening feels a little weird because we're not getting her side of the story. It feels like he's kind of forcing his affections on her rather than like both of them having this connection, and that's really like, that's starting to bug me, especially when it gets into the stuff where he's sitting there going, well, I know what's best for you, and like, I know you can't possibly go out on your own. Do you know what it's like for a young woman on your own? And she's like, well, I've been on my own for 2 years. Yeah, I know. Like, we keep having these moments that are supposed to be wonderful and romantic, and I'm just like, shoot me in the foot. Just shoot me in, like, because we have these just paternalistic moments with him, and I'm frustrated. I'm also frustrated that she's like, please leave me alone. She has continually been, please leave me alone, since they've gotten to London, and he is completely ignoring that. Like, you're telling me that Julia Quinn couldn't find a better way for them to have to be thrown together than just him showing up at his mother's house and harassing her. Like, I know that she wants to be with him. I know that that is there, but he's also completely ignoring what she's saying. And like, there are so many ways that you could do this plot. Like, have her be like, hey, can you escort your sister to blah, blah, blah? And Sophie, can you go with Eloise? Like, there are like definite things that he could be doing, and we could be having interactions with them that are arising out of the fact that she is the lady's maid for Eloise, Francesca, and Hyacinth. We don't need to have him like doing this overbearing, like, seeking her out thing. She's just trying to work, she's trying to do her job, and I want him to stop. It's frustrating because they really do sell how much they connect in that section before he makes the offer to, like, have her come live as his mistress in London. And, like, and he's guessed that she is illegitimate, but she has not confirmed it, and so she will not tell him, like, what that did to her. Like, he has no idea, like, how she's felt and all of this stuff, because number one, he doesn't know what family she's from. Violet, honestly, is the one that's done the most to figure out, like, Violet is the one that's like, oh no, she's definitely, like, an illegitimate daughter of somebody, probably, or she is, like, an aristocrat's daughter that got pregnant and got kicked out of the home. Something like that. Violet has done more work to find out what's going on with this woman than Benedict has. He's just interested in sucking face, and I'm just like, I really need Anthony to just, like, shake him right now. Or Daphne. Like, any of his siblings. I just need them to, like... Actually, that would be a really interesting scene. If we probably won't, but if we got a scene between Benedict and Daphne where she's kind of explaining, well, yeah, but dude, like, this is harassment. Like, if we got to do that. Like, when he rescued her, he's like, I would just hope that if my sisters were in the same position, someone would step in to help them the way that I stepped in to help you. We as a society have moved past the need to humanize women through the fact that we have a sister, mother, daughter, etc. I think that a lot of the time people don't realize what it's like until they know a woman that they you know, because a lot of the time your exposure to the negative effects of being a woman in society, if you are a man, your exposure is going to be through the people, the women that you know. Still, this is a fictional book. I will check in with you guys, probably, honestly, I may just check in with you guys when the book is finished at this point, because I am so close to the end. I can see why they skipped Benedict and went to Colin and Penelope. Number one, just because they are established characters already, and Sophie has not been established yet. I can see how they could use this, like maybe have the masquerade ball this season, and then in the next season we get the flashback, but so far, this has been the weakest of the three, and the one that I'm just like, maybe they just don't know how they can do this plot in today's day and age without it, like, looking like a workplace harassment situation. I'm so annoyed right now. We're back. I don't know why I'm updating. This vlog is going to be so long already, so I don't know why I am updating you guys now. I am so close to the end. I put an hour on the sprints to hopefully I'll at least get through the end of the book, maybe not through the second epilogue, but through the end of the book, and, like, get this finished. It's gotten better. Benedict has had the realization that he's been acting like a bore. I love that he did come to that on his own, though. Like, people said things, like, the way that he connected, like, people said things that were not specifically, like, targeted at his, at this situation and how he was handling it, but he still put those together, like one of the things his mom said is like, well, you've never, like, you know, you and your brothers have been very sheltered all of your lives, have been very fortunate, blah, 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 and he kind of started going, like, oh, like, he's sitting here thinking about, like, all of this stuff, and, like, connecting it to things that Sophie has said, so I do like that he is piecing these things together on his own, that no one has had to sit down and spell it out for him. It has improved. Like, he's just dumb. And he's dumb in a way that specifically irks me for, like, 100 pages. Up until the point where he asks her to be his mistress, and then where we've hit, where he's finally, like, had his come to Jesus moment. That, like, 100 pages is just so frustrating to be reading. And I don't know why anyone would find that sexy. I understand that she's doing this fantasy kind of thing, that part of romance is this fantasy of someone desiring you so much that they're willing to do things they wouldn't normally do. But I wish it had been a little more, or a little less imposing or overbearing towards Sophie. I don't think it was executed correctly, and, like, again, it's kind of a plot point, but it's still very frustrating to read. And, like, I don't think I will, like, this is never going to be my favorite. I know there are Sophie Beckett stans out there who she's their favorite. I don't think this is going to be my favorite, just because, well, obviously I think The Viscount Who Loved Me is going to be my favorite out of all of the ones that I've read so far, but I haven't read Colin and Pins yet. But just because, like, I'm so frustrated by how Benedict is handling things that I'm like, I just... Alright, let's see if I can get through this update without melting, because it is so hot in my room right now. I've made it 120 pages into Romancing Mr. Bridgerton at this point. I'm liking it. I'm liking this setup a lot. I like it a little bit more than I liked the set. Like, you guys know I had problems with An Offer for a Gentleman. Like, they're just, like, the setup and the build for this is just, I'm having a good time with it. I'm surprised that there is such a time gap between book 3 and book 4 here. One thing I forgot to mention last time, which I will see how it goes in this one, but I was slightly irked that the one couple that has sex before they are married in these books is the one where the woman is a serving maid, is of the working class. Like, that did not sit right with me the more I thought about it. I'm liking this. I'm liking, like, the little, like, the way that they are portraying both Penelope's friendship with Eloise and her friendship with Colin. I'm enjoying that. I totally get, like, where she is with the whole, like, he'll never see me. It's feeling very, very applicable to how I felt as a teenager. One thing I will say that I'm not liking, and it was mentioned in both the last book and this book, is both of the female characters in these books make mention to being treated, or people in their lives wanting a slave. And considering the time that these are written in and what was going on in the world at that time, I do find it very interesting that we had that in there. That comment in there in both of these, when it's like, in one case probably was more comparable, but in this case would not have been comparable really at all. So far, that's it. That's what I got. I like it so far. I'm having a good time with it, and I like Penelope as a character. I'm starting to wonder if Lady Whistledown in the books is the same person as Lady Whistledown in the show, because we know who Lady Whistledown is in the show. I can see how Julia Quinn is leaving open the room for the development that I know from the show, but I'm also kind of starting to doubt that a little bit based on some of the... We'll see. Like, the way that Lady Whistledown is included in the prologue makes me think that maybe it's still possible. I would like to apologize in advance to the Pollen fans, because there's an update that I thought I did for this book, and I cannot find it. It's not there. It does not exist. And I'm kind of frustrated, because that means that I probably sat in front of the camera and talked to the camera, and it wasn't recording. That's probably what happened. Long story short, I have finished Romancing Mr. Bridgerton by Julia Quinn. I am going to save, like, my final ranking and final thoughts for after I've edited all of the footage. I want to get through, because it's been such a long time that I've been doing this. I want to actually, like, pull some of my thoughts together before I sit down and, I have an idea what my ranking is, but I want to be able to express why my ranking is. Definitely liked this one better than An Offer from a Gentleman. Just, like, there was one moment in this book that really did frustrate me and make me angry, and I think that is simply it's one of those things that I can kind of dismiss, because it was one moment that goes kind of against what we see from the character. It's just a moment where, like, Colin grabs Penelope's wrist, and he's he had a hold of her, he was already holding her hand or holding her wrist, and, like, he was trying to get her attention, and then something happens that makes him extremely angry, and, like, there was a part where it's like, and he knew he was holding her hard enough that he was bruising her, and that's not acceptable. Like, there are times I think that people genuinely do not know their own strength and may bruise someone. Or, you know, there are situations where it doesn't matter if you're hurting them. The important part is to get them out of the situation. Like, though, that's a completely different thing than what was happening here, where he was making a conscious choice to continually or to continue holding her so hard it hurt. I am going to dismiss that as a problem with Julia Quinn and what Julia Quinn thinks is acceptable for men to do. I'm not going to account because it's so against everything else that is going on in this book with Colin, in my opinion. This one was so interesting, and here's the thing. So I know we've talked about before that the Bridgerton show seems to be operating. Can I put the book down? I'm going to put the book down. I need my hands for this. We've talked about before that the Bridgerton show seems to be shortening the timeline of things. We've got like Daphne's in her like first season instead of like her second or third. All of those things. And I think that is actually, like, there are parts of that amount of time that it takes for these books to, oh, you're gonna die on me right now? I will hold that thought, guys. I'll be right back. I'm back. Slightly different angle, probably. Whatever. We were talking about time and the passage of time in Bridgerton. So here's the thing. In the books, it has been 8 years between An Offer from a Gentleman and Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. In the show, it looks like it's only been about a year between season 2 and season 3. And the way that Colin and Penelope's relationship works, in my opinion, kind of works better when you have that really long span of time. And I haven't seen the show yet. Obviously, it is May 15th. The show doesn't come out till tomorrow. I don't know what I'm gonna do about watching the show for, like, how we're gonna talk about, maybe I'll do like a wrap-up of the show. I don't know. Talk to me. Tell me how you think that should go. What I'm trying to get to is, in the books, it's been 8 years, and so by the time we get to this book, they are kind of different people. They've been through different things. Colin has been away for most of those 8 years, and he has been changing as a person and growing. And so when they come back, they are the version of themselves that is ready to be in that relationship and ready to see each other. And they do kind of, like, obviously Penelope's been in love with him since the beginning, but they do kind of cover Colin being like, wait, hold on. She's like, I could have had this 8 years ago, and like being mad at himself for that. But the fact that he hasn't noticed Penelope until now makes more sense than I feel they're going to be able to pull off in the show. Do not get me wrong, I don't care. At the end of the day, I am here for a good love story, and you know what? I don't care. I don't care why, like, this hasn't worked. I think they've had moments of connection, and they've had moments of friendship, and I would like to see them handle this really well and give me a really good reason for, like, why Colin hasn't noticed her before now. On the other hand, I'm gonna go with whatever reason they give me. I really think they are losing something in not letting the passage of time happen for these characters. That said, I just had so much fun with these two, and like them, especially Colin, having this realization that the perfect person for him has been there the entire time. I do love stories that, like, it's like you turn around and you realize your soulmate's been there the entire time. I'm such a sucker for those stories. I am. I have to admit that. I have to be honest. I have to be honest. Like, it doesn't matter whether it's like they've known each other forever or they've just been working together for like three weeks, whatever. I'm just like, give me this good. This is good food. Please give me more of it. I cannot discuss this next bit without getting into spoilers. So I am assuming that most of y'all have at least seen season 1 by this point. If you are watching this video, I'm assuming that. I am going to put a spoiler tag right up here for you guys while I discuss this next bit. So if you need to skip it, go ahead. I'll put the timestamp for where you would need to go to down here. Just skip ahead. Okay? Okay. I'm very intrigued into how they're going to handle the Lady Whistledown plot point. I will be honest. Because the way they handle it in the book, I actually really liked. There is a moment where Colin is angry that Penelope is Lady Whistledown, but that anger is at all times, like, primarily concerned with the risk she has put herself at to be doing these, and what, like, anger at her, like, thinking she hasn't thought through what will happen. The anger is based in fear. And then there's a little bit of, like, some trouble between them with afterwards, but a lot of it is, I liked how they kind of navigated the fact that he is jealous that she has something that, even though her name is not being attached to it, she has something to her name. And I liked the way they worked through that. I liked the way that he kind of had to sit and he had to grapple with those feelings before he was finally able to like come clean and be like, listen, I know you think that this is what is happening, but what's actually happening in my mind is here, and I am feeling inadequate because of this thing. They were cute. They were fun. I really just like, there is not much more I can say about, oh, that's right. There's one other like specific point that I really like. We have this story here where we've got two people who have both in their own way created a version of the other person. Penelope has like this idealized version of Colin that she is kind of put up on a pedestal, and then Colin has this version of Penelope that he has always seen as kind of like his little sister's best friend. They're also, I think, the closest in age of all of the Bridgerton couples, which I like a lot better. I know that was like really like a common age gap in the day and time, but still, for both of them, as he's having this realization and kind of reclassifying Penelope or re-examining like his relationship with Penelope in this new way where he's like, well, oh, she's more than just Eloise's best friend, like getting to know her on an actual level. She's also having this moment where she's realizing that Colin is not the perfect, affable, charming person that everyone thinks he is. That, like, even she has not noticed, okay? Like, even Lady Whistledown has not been able to crack that secret behind Colin, because not even Colin's own family understands the level of like repression that is going on with his thoughts and his feelings and his emotions, just because he feels the need and the pressure to always be the charming one and happy and like not let people see when he is angry or hurt or upset. It's just so interesting to see her be going like, this person in my head that I was in love with is not this person that is in front of me, and watch her kind of have to fall in love with him all over again and like recontextualize everything that she knew about him. A lot of it is about Colin being able to finally sit down and, instead of pushing away his anger and insecurity, be able to actually sit down and examine it and think about it and put words to it and figure out what to do about it. And I liked that. I really liked that kind of as a plot point where we're having these two people learning, like, who thought they knew each other, learn who the other person really truly is. And that's such an interesting, like, I don't think we see, like, I'm trying to think of the last book I read where it was about two people having to, like, who've known each other for a long time, having the realization that this, the only thing, well, no, because they're exactly the people that they think they are. But, like, this person who I thought was this way is getting to know that person. I can't think of the last time I read that. I don't know. Like, right now I'm trying to decide, did I like Daphne and Simon's story better, or did I like Colin and Penelope's story better? I'm gonna have to go sit down and think about that for a bit before I am able to give you guys a final decision on where I land with all of that, because I myself have no idea. I will say it's very interesting. If you are worried about the books being super, super smutty, I will tell you right now, the smuttiest of them is The Duke and I. That is the one that has like the most sex. And then after that, it's like 2 scenes tops per book. I feel like this one got the least amount of smut out of all of them. Like, there's definitely a lot of like making out and kissing and all of that stuff, but like when we're talking about actually doing the deed, there's a lot of it in The Duke and I. Just a lot of it, because that's a plot point. And then not as much. As promised, I am here with my final thoughts on the books that I just read. I want to talk about the books a little bit before we get into my final rankings, so we'll start with The Duke and I. This one, I understand why people feel the need to skip it, and I also understand people who are just, that scene that happens in the book is not something they can get past. As I mentioned in the last book, I prefer to look at that as a mistake on the author's part, a poor decision that they made plot-wise, and it didn't end up taking away from my enjoyment of this kind of funny, like, fake dating fiasco that they have going on here. I really liked the build of the relationship between Daphne and Simon. I really liked, like, the things that they are working through. I don't think that this handled the scene any better than this show did. I think they both failed on the part of acknowledging Simon's agency and how that was violated in that moment. But there are other things in here in the book specifically that she goes into. I don't know how well the representation is done, but I do like that we get more of Simon's thought process there. The primary impact that it has on him in the show is him being insecure and him having, like, the way his father treats him. In the book, it's still something that he genuinely, like, we see him struggle with that. And I wish we had gotten to see more of that in the present and not just in the flashbacks. This, I think, was a good introduction to the family and getting to know the family and the characters that we have and the idea of Lady Whistledown, which, how, I want to know what they're going to do about that in 5, 6, 7, and 8, my friends. How are we going to work with that, considering, if you know, you know. All in all, I thought that it was good, barring, like, my one major issue, and I'm kind of mad that they made their first child in the show a boy and not a girl. After that, I read The Viscount Who Loved Me. This got 4 stars. This was my favorite in the bunch, which I have to admit, so far, Kate and Anthony are my favorites in the show as well. They're just so chaotic and messy and, like, they spend so much time not knowing what they want and then so much more time being mad that they're into each other, and that is just, it's my kryptonite. I love when people are mad that they are into someone and trying to figure out what the heck is wrong with them. I much preferred how they handled Anthony originally wanting to marry Kate's sister versus marrying Kate. I prefer how they handled that here versus in the show. I don't think we needed the big wedding thing that happens in the show. That took it a bit too far, and I think there are things that we get because the book doesn't go that far that would have been nice in the show. That said, my favorite moments for this couple are from some moments from the show, and those are not in the book. So, like, this one was a bit of a mixed bag in, like, whether I prefer the show to the book. Duke and I felt that they both did a pretty good job of adapting the source material, and I didn't have a preference. This one, I do. I have a preference here. I really like the way that Julia Quinn covered what Kate and Edwina's situation was in this book. It really, like, it made it very apparent why they were both having their season at the same time, why it was so important for Edwina to marry someone, kind of Kate's thought process when it comes to that. I like that, like, Kate, while she is older and not planning to make an auspicious match, like, she's not planning on marrying a Viscount when she goes into this, she still thinks she might be able to make a good match, and I appreciated that. I also just like the relationship between Kate and Edwina and her mom. Like, they just do I loved watching that relationship. My favorite part by far, though, was the chaos, and this is in the show and in the book, the chaos of Anthony's entire family knowing what is up before Anthony, like, he got hit by Colin, he got hit by his mom, they got hit by her mom, he got hit by dad, like, all of them were like, no, what is going on, my dude? And that was like the icing on the cake, and the icing is my favorite part of cake. After that, we have book 3, An Offer from a Gentleman, which is Benedict's book. Benedict, so that I just didn't like this one as much. There are parts of this book and the relationship between Benedict and Sophie that I really like, especially at the beginning when they are connecting, when they are talking, and when they are working through, like, they're finding a little bit about each other. However, after we get, like, his offer of being like, hey, come to London with me and live with me as not my wife, I just got so frustrated, and my frustration, I just couldn't get past that frustration. You know what I mean? I know there are going to be people that are like, wait, you're okay with what happened in The Duke and I, but you are not okay with what happened in this book, and, like, for me, those are two different things. First of all, I'm not okay with what happened in The Duke and I don't like that. Like, I do not, like, I think we could have had that exact same conflict without her having to do that, but it still was a split-second decision, and she was like, I would not do that again. Again, I don't like that it happened, but it is a one-time thing that they are able to work through. It is something that is made very abundantly clear is not going to happen again. Benedict continually coming after Sophie and, like, ignoring her, requesting him staying away, just, like, that is a red flag for me. That is something that is so normalized in society, that it is okay for dudes to pursue women even when they are saying, please leave me alone, please go away. Again, that comes to what I consider a flaw on the author's part, where she could have found other ways for them to be, you know, shoved together and have to be in proximity to each other that did not include him continually ignoring what she wanted. And I think the fact that Like, what happens with Daphne and Simon happens after you've already had all of this build and this establishment of their relationship, and you've gotten to, like, you get to the point where you want to root for them as a couple. It's easier to be like, forgive that mistake on Julia Quinn's part, versus here, this is happening at the same time as these moments that are supposed to be making me root for them as a couple. And I just, like, maybe if we'd had more of Sophie, like, unabashedly wanting to be with Benedict, I would have been okay with it. But, like, so much of her thought process was just, I have to stay away, and it got to me, and I didn't enjoy it as much. I also didn't think her handling of the, like, fairy tale retelling trope, I wanted it to be a bit more subtle. I understand why people like Sophie so much and why they enjoy her character, because she really does take charge of her life at the beginning of this book, and she really is working on, like, she has a plan. She knows what she wants. Benedict kind of comes in and wrecks all of that. That's kind of what happens. So I understand why people like Sophie. I just, like, couldn't get on board with Benedict. And I've got to be on board with both. It still got 3 stars because it was decently written, but I just, yeah, it's not my favorite. And the final one we got to was Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, the one that I'm going to be watching the show later tonight. I don't know. I have no idea what's going on with that because I may still be editing this video. I love this. I love Penelope as a character. Colin had his moments, but I at least understood his struggles a bit more than I understood Benedict's in the last book. For Colin, all the places where, like, he is pushing back against Penelope or maybe, like, flirting with her boundaries in a lot of these things, or like, arguing with her, like, the things that people would probably be like, why is Colin doing this? I could see his motivation, and they were all about, like, him disagreeing on the matter of, like, being like, no, I think this is a stupid decision. I think you're putting yourself at risk. I liked that Penelope stuck to her guns, though, in this book. Like, she was like, no, this is who I am. This is my work and what I have done. And you're not going to, like, I'm not going to let someone else take that from me, regardless of whether or not that puts me at risk. I'm very excited to see how they adapt this. I'm very, like, here's the thing. Like, there is a character in here that is crucial to moments in the plot, and is actually part of, like, one of the funniest scenes in this book involves this character. She is not in the show. Confirmed, not in the show. We have not seen her. Penelope only has 3 sisters in the show versus 4 in the books. I understand a little bit why they are jumping ahead in the books a little bit, because it makes more sense for them to do this while Penelope is a debutante versus waiting 8 years because she doesn't have anybody that she would be chaperoning going to the balls. I loved how they were both just little nerds who like to write things and were, like, bonding over all of that. I will be very interested to see, because I understand why the show adds in plot points to flesh this out a bit more. There is so much description and kind of talking about society and things that end up being cut out of the book, because if you were to adapt that in a modern show, it won't work as well. You're going to lose the reader's interest. That's why the show has as many readers, the watchers. It is more likely to lose the watcher's interest. That's why they have so many subplots. That's why they have these little things that are like, we're getting little glimpses of what may come later. Definitely get a few glimpses of what comes after this book. Not only in this, but don't read the second epilogue if you don't want to be spoiled for book 5. There are events that happen in book 5 that I'm pretty sure are happening concurrent to this book. So that's going to be really interesting when I end up getting to the latter half of this series to see how they did that. 3 stars for this one as well. I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. Final rankings. I think it will surprise exactly no people that I liked An Offer from a Gentleman the least. This is coming in 4th place. We didn't jive. I understand there are people that are going to enjoy this and eat this up and have a good time with it. Did not jive with me. After that, and I know this is probably, please know how close this was, and this is probably going to be a controversial ranking. I apologize in advance to anyone who was offended by this, but coming in 3rd place is Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. Like I said, I enjoyed it. I had a great time. I really liked Colin and Penelope as a couple. I was rooting for them, which is not what I can say for the last book. However, they didn't have quite the impact on me that Simon and Daphne did. And I don't, like, some of that might be because of the show. I can't tell you because I haven't seen their season yet. In 2nd place, we have The Duke and I. There are going to be people that are like, Margaret, that should be in last place. It's my video. and my reading tastes that we're judging, not yours. There was something about them that just like got to me. It might have something to do with the fact that Daphne is an eldest daughter and I am an eldest daughter, and so of course the two books about the eldest of the siblings, or like the eldest in the like sections of siblings, of course those are going to be the ones that I resonated with and enjoyed the most. Like, if you asked me to explain why I liked this one more than I liked Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, I couldn't put it into words for you. I just did. And then finally, proving that I do not have the worst taste in the world, The Viscount Who Loved Me is my favorite out of all of them. Like, I can't see this book getting topped. Having read all of these, the writing for her books, in my opinion, is the strongest in The Duke and I and The Viscount Who Loved Me. After that, I felt like the writing went a bit downhill, even though I enjoyed the story and I enjoyed the couples. I'm a big fan of Anthony and Kate. Having read all of these, there's probably some eldest sibling bias going on here. So that was me reading the Bridgerton books so that you don't have to. Let me know, actually, like, did this video make you go, maybe I'm interested in them? Or were you able to go, you know, just not for me, having watched all of this mess that I have put together for you? Are there any other books that you would like for me to read so that you don't have to? Put those down in the comments. Maybe I'll make this a series. Maybe I will do this more often because I'm having a good time with it. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, if you enjoyed this video, I'll have videos over here. If you are looking for more books like Bridgerton, I have some recommendations right over here. And right down here is something that YouTube thinks that you will like specifically. Let me know what it is. I'm always curious what videos pop up down there. That is it for now, my friends. Happy reading, and I will see you later when we'll talk about more wordy, nerdy things. Bye!